Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Mo Brooks is creating jobs out of state. Also, there's a new U.S. Senate candidate. And Kay Ivey calls a special session. Look out for those rotten tomatoes. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, investigative reporter and columnist at APR. Welcome.
Hi guys. How are y'all?
Fantastic.
Well, we used to have an old saying, you know, the legislature's coming into town to hide your women, your liquor, and your money. But now you got to hide a lot more than that, Josh. You know.
Yeah, you better hide everything when they come to town.
With this bunch, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah,
Jeez.
So Governor Kay Ivey has announced that there will be a call for a special session to begin on October 28th. That'll be next week. And the point of the session is to address reapportionment, redistricting, which should be interesting to say the least. I can't imagine that the Democrats are going to be particularly happy with how the Republicans draw the district lines.
The re-gerrymandering, you mean? Yeah, I got you.
Re-gerrymandering,
yes.
yes.
Re-gerrymandering.
Yes. But, Susan, I mean, it should be an interesting session, for sure.
It should be, and it's going to go pretty much the same as it's always gone. The Republicans are going to redistrict and try to stack and pack and do all the things that they do to make sure that the Republican majority, or supermajority, I should say, stays in power, and Democrats are going to, yell about it, and it's going to be a rewind.
I mean, we haven't seen the maps yet, but Josh, I don't think there'll be any great surprises, do you?
I don't think so. I mean, I know that there's a lot of pressure right now being applied by Democrats and some other groups out there, some nonpartisan groups that are really trying to push for the idea of keeping counties whole, which is something that's
right
in the guidelines that they're supposed to do. They're supposed to keep counties whole and not have these little slivers of districts, shooting over into other counties so you can wrestle control away from people. But we'll see. Right? I know in talking to some people right now, the way the maps have been drawn, that was a focus. Now, will that ultimately be the map that gets out? I would suspect not. And I just would encourage people. This is not a good way to do things. To get involved in this, you need to know what's kind of going on, because this determines who's going to represent you and how competitive those races are going to be, and whether or not your voice is going to be heard in this. And the way that we're doing it is so counterintuitive to the representative government that we claim to want, that I don't think it's a good thing. And you see the result of it in our state.
I mean, and I think we go back to 2010, which seems ancient now, but the lines that the Republicans won under in 2010 were actually drawn by the Democrats in 2000. Those were the ones that were instituted. So they obviously were drawn a little bit more fairly, or without as much sense of, hey, but I don't think the Democrats ever saw this Republican wave coming.
No, and listen, they weren't. I mean, I don't think that there's any questions that the Democrats tried their best to draw the lines as favorably as possible to them and still meet the court standards. And that's what I'm talking about. This is all the way around. This is not a good system that we have. There's a better way where we could create a panel of people, and ensure that these districts are drawn up more fairly, and that's where we should be shooting for. And we should never leave the people whose jobs are at stake and allow them to draw up their own district lines. It's just never going to work out good for us.
I know for a fact that here in Etowah County, there's a sliver of Etowah County that has St. Clair County voters in it. So you got St. Clair County voters, which is a neighboring county deciding for senatorial races in Etowah County.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, the Democrats do it, the Republicans do it.
They both do
I
it.
think we really, if we really cared about democracy the way we say we do, it would be handled by a panel. I want to move on. I know from talking to the people in Montgomery, one of the big issues is that the governor is going to have to try to keep the nonsense out of the session.
Good luck with that.
There's one thing that is definitely in the call, and that is redistricting. But they're coming along with critical race theory. They're coming along with banning vaccine mandates. The business community, Josh, wants these vaccine mandates. But you've got the base of the Republican Party who does not. What I think the Ivey administration would like to do is have a straight up and down, just let's focus on the real issues facing Alabama, the constitutional issues.
Good luck with that.
And not the craziness.
Yeah, and exactly like Susan said, good luck with that. I believe that's probably going to be the call that she puts out is just going to be for redistricting, and that's what it's going to be focused on. But then, anybody can introduce anything, and if you can get it to 2/3, you then have to consider it. So, I would suspect that there will probably be, at least in the House, there'll probably be some craziness that takes place because, God knows they love it. I would suspect that they're going to address critical race theory and not the fact that we can't feed any of the kids in school anymore, because
Exactly.
why address a real problem when you could go after one that doesn't exist? And speaking of which, isn't it weird how much we protect Confederate monuments, but we don't want to teach what the people in the monuments actually did? So it's I just think that they're going to have a real problem with this thing, is what I think. They're going to have a real problem with grandstanding because it's election season and it's time for the chickens to dance.
Exactly.
Well, and what I think is going to happen is probably we're going to see Governor Ivey come out and make some kind of proclamation or executive
She's gonna have
order.
to do something.
Well, no, but I mean, she's going to come out and say no vaccine mandates by fiat, by Governor Fiat, just to calm it down. You know what I mean? That's a very real possibility. She's a Southern governor in a Southern state that has a primary, right? So
Those mandates are very popular. I mean, they're popular with voters and they're popular with business owners.
Of course they're. Susan and I were in a place the other day, clearly stated, medical facility. Everyone
Like 5 signs everywhere.
must wear a mask to enter this facility. We were the only people, other than the healthcare providers, that had on masks.
Yep.
And nobody said anything because
No.
they don't want to get in fights with people who don't wear masks.
No.
And listen, let's talk about the mandates. 98%.
And I was against the wall. Make sure I was not near the person.
98% of the Navy, United States Navy, is vaccinated.
Yep.
Most hospitals around the country have 98% vaccination rate. It's not costing jobs. It's not harming
United
people.
Airlines has 99% of their people vaccinated.
Yeah, most police
This is
forces and
working.
fire departments. Most police
Right.
Forces and fire departments have well
And
over
the numbers
90%.
are going down. The
Right,
numbers
right.
are going down.
All right, well, that's going to have to be the last word on this one. We'll be right back. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We have a vaccine mandate in this house.
Yeah, we do.
All right.
No entry.
Whether I am in Margaritaville enjoying a cheeseburger in paradise or cruising around on the Gulf of Mexico, I always make sure to vote. I am Jimmy Buffett, and I want to encourage you, too, to become a registered voter and to obtain a photo ID so you can have your voice heard and your vote count just like me. It is 5 o'clock somewhere, but fortunately, you have from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to get to the polls and exercise your right to vote. Keep making a difference for Alabama.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. I do want to cover one other thing that I think could come up in the special. and that is that the legislature votes to allocate money to the hospitals and other healthcare providers from the American Rescue Plan Act. I think that may very well happen.
ARPA. Well, they've already allocated, $400 million out of for the prisons. They should actually allocate it for something that it was actually provided for.
Well, they need a stopgap. They need a bridge to get through this. I want to go back to the politics of the politics. Mike Durant became nationally known for the movie Black Hawk Down. He was subject of that movie. He was captured in Somalia, held for 11 days, and he has now thrown his hat in the ring for the U.S. Senate race. Josh, he is a former POW, and he says he is a Trump Republican. I don't know how you square that one.
I don't either. Not only that, he also worked on John McCain's campaign and was a big admirer of the former Arizona senator, and rightfully so. I like John McCain myself a lot, and I didn't always agree with him, but I appreciated his service, and being a kind of a pro-military guy, I kind of liked what he did, and to hear Trump just degrade him viciously over and over and over again, and famously say that McCain was only a war hero because he was captured and that he liked people who weren't captured. And then to have a guy who was a POW and who was, a big admirer of McCain come out as a pro-Trump guy. Why do we do this? Why are we doing this?
Okay, I have a real issue with this. My dad was a World War II prisoner of war in a German starvation camp. And the fact that they're bantering this shit around as something that my blood is so hot right now. And for him to say pro-Trump, really? When he says only losers get captured? My dad, when he got out of the starvation camp, was 97 pounds. They couldn't move him for 2 weeks. Please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Anyway,
it's offensive, man. It's offensive to a lot of truly great Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what he did and this love of this crazy person is so offensive to so many people. And I honestly don't understand the military support for him and the way he gets by with this. I just don't.
Well, Mr. Durant looks like an attractive candidate. I don't know where his base is. If you look at Katie Britt has pretty much wrapped up the Alpha, the rural vote endorsement. She's probably going to wrap up the business endorsement. Mo Brooks has the crazies. I don't know where Mr. Durant fits in, but obviously he thinks he has a shot. I mean, his net worth reportedly is around $120 million. He started a business in Huntsville Pinnacle Solutions.
But he's from New Hampshire.
He is from New Hampshire. Tommy Tuberville is probably the first.
Well, he still lives in Florida.
Probably the first Alabama senator to not be from Alabama. I don't know, but I think that's true.
You're right. I don't know. It seems as though he's trying to carve out some ground to the right of Mo Brooks, which would be pretty difficult to do, I would say.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how many people are also standing on that ground. And it's easy to attack Mo Brooks on a lot of things because he certainly has a lot of flaws. But you're right. I just don't understand where he's going to fit into this race.
I mean, he looks like an attractive candidate. He's a war hero.
Yeah.
Basically, he's a pilot.
Yankee.
He's got a lot of money.
He's Yankee.
Nobody cares if he's a Yankee, according to Susan.
Yeah, listen. I've heard he's a very nice guy and a decent man to work for. But I don't. That's all I know about him, and I'm afraid that may be all I ever know about him.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm certainly not disparaging him.
I'm not either.
I just question the Trump loyalty. I just don't understand it.
That's it. And that's grabbing votes. And if you take your POW status and you grab votes for it, I have a real problem with that.
Anyway, fundraising. Basically, Katie Britt outraised everybody by a long shot. Mo Brooks raised about a little less than $670,000. And Susan, it looks like he's creating jobs. Mo Brooks is creating jobs.
In Alabama. You know what? He's not creating them in Alabama because he only spends 1/5 of his money here. Out of $500,000 in the last 3 months, he spent a little over $100,000 in the state. Everything else was out of state. Yeah, everything else was out of state. $400,000 out of state.
I mean, Josh, I mean, you would think that some of these candidates would want to invest in Alabama talent. I know Angie Horn has won a bunch of elections. I know a lot of people in Alabama that won elections, but evidently
there's nobody talented here, according to him.
Mo Brooks obviously thinks that you need to bring in out-of-state talent.
He's not a part of the swamp.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be that nobody in the state wants to work with him because we know him the best. But it's I don't know, man. It does seem as though you would want to to work with the people who've helped you get elected in the past. Because surely there have been Alabama people who have helped him get elected to the House and to all those other positions that he's held over the last 40 years. So you would think that there would be you would devote most of your money to those folks, but I guess maybe maybe they don't want to work with him. I don't know.
He's anti-swamp, so apparently people out of state keep him out of the swamp.
No, because they're D.C. folks. They're right in the swamp. Arlington, Virginia folks. It is the swamp.
Oops.
But I just think it's interesting that so many times, Josh, we see this where these big candidates, they go to out-of-state companies. I mean, and they probably are all doing it. But to spend
most
all...
of them actually are.
Huh?
Most of them actually are.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Except for a few.
I don't know of any of the Senate candidates that don't have out-of-state people working for them. I just wonder, spending that kind of money out-of-state, it just, to me, it sends the wrong message. But maybe that's because I do all my business in-state, except Amazon.
Which doesn't make any sense to me because people in D.C. don't understand Alabamians. Alabamians are a different creature. We're a totally different creature. So how can D.C. people understand how we're going to vote or how we think? That doesn't make any sense to me.
We are particular people down here.
Peculiar. Anyway.
Peculiar.
Oops.
I wouldn't say that. Yeah. Josh, you had a great column this week about the dancing chicken, but we won't have enough time to get into it. But I recommend that people read your column on the dancing chicken and your podcast. How can they watch your podcast?
Oh, Alabama Politics This Week. Check us out on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcast from. You can find us there. Just search for Alabama Politics This Week.
More people watch your podcast than any of these so-called talking head radio shows.
Combined. If you took all of their viewerships or listenerships, they don't have the numbers that your podcast has.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Whether I am in Margaritaville enjoying a cheeseburger in paradise or cruising around on the Gulf of Mexico, I always make sure to vote. I am Jimmy Buffett, and I want to encourage you, too, to become a registered voter and to obtain a photo ID so you can have your voice heard and your vote count just like me. It is 5 o'clock somewhere, but fortunately, you have from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to get to the polls and exercise your right to vote. Keep making a difference for Alabama.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Josh, a story came out of Business Insider this week that you also reported on, that Mo Brooks, who has been railing against vaccine mandates and all that, turns out that Mr. Brooks and his wife took advantage of the Pfizer boom and invested a bunch of money in Pfizer, and then rode the wave up and then sold it, and then failed to disclose it in the required length of time.
Oops.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Business Insider reported that and had some good details and a nice interview with Martha Brooks, Mo's wife, and in which she took full responsibility for failing to file those disclosures. Although I'm not really sure it's on her to do that, but pretty sure it's on him. That's exactly what they did. I mean, their advisor, according to Martha Brooks, told them to buy this Pfizer stock, which they already owned roughly $20,000 worth of Pfizer stock, which was inherited when Mo Brooks' mother passed away. And so they added to that up to $50,000, and they then decided to sell it while at the same time Mo was railing against these vaccines and vaccine mandates and questioning whether or not Pfizer had acted appropriately in disclosing the effectiveness of the vaccine. I don't know if y'all remember that little incident where he said that he was, that they had withheld that until after the election to hurt Trump, and which was, the CEO of Pfizer was like, what? No, that's not how this works. It was, it was just a weird sort of deal, and he missed the deadline. Of course, these are Congress people, so there's actually no real consequence for doing anything illegal. You can just do whatever the hell you want to when you get there.
It's the Stock Act. Basically, they charge him $250.
Actually, they won't even charge him that. That you've got 30 days, and then if you violate that, it's supposed to be $200. But then they've typically just been giving you another 30 days, and if you get it within that period of time, they go ahead and waive the $200.
Only in Congress, right?
Yeah,
I guess. All right.
It's the same way with you with speeding tickets, right? I mean, don't they just waive that if you tell them, hey, I was only going within 30 miles over the speed limit, right?
Yeah, exactly. It happens all the time. On the good news side of things, the Women's Fund of Greater Alabama has now, of Greater Birmingham, the Women's Fund of Greater Birmingham, Susan, has now become a statewide foundation to empower women.
It has.
This was a new announcement last week. They have done a great work. The Women's Foundation of Alabama is an organization that changes lives.
It is. It raises women's equality up. It looks everything through the gender lens. It really is an equal opportunity organization, and I think it going statewide is going to be profound for Alabama. It really is going to empower a lot of women statewide to go forth and do a lot of things that we like to do, which is help people and get our agenda around.
They're really a philanthropic group for women and women's issues. I spoke with Melanie Bridgeforth, the president CEO, the other day, and I asked her how was that going with Governor Ivey, having a female governor, and with some of our more conservative men who sometimes don't seem to take women's issues as seriously as we ought to.
Sometimes.
And she said that
always.
She said that the group has had a good working relationship with all those folks, and they feel like that they can make good headway on empowering women. And I hope she's right. She is certainly a go-getter and a very impressive woman.
Yeah. Well, maybe I hope they have all the success in the world, especially getting more women elected into state office, because God knows the men are not doing a great job.
Nah.
Well,
but I mean, this is going to help with that, and it's going to be a crawl. It's going to be a climb, but it always is with women's issues.
Well, I think that the more we empower women, the better the society is. I don't know where they get all these notions that women are second-class citizens or should be.
Because you're afraid of us.
Well, I am certainly afraid of you, but I don't know that everyone is. Speaking of which, Gina Maiola, who has been Governor Kay Ivey's press secretary for the last several years, has now become the communications director after Leah Garner decided to go back into the education sector. And we're looking forward to working with Gina more closely. I think she'll do a good job.
Gina's great.
She does a good job. Also this week, we found out that Mobile's Victor Gaston, who's been the Speaker pro tem of the House, he is retiring. Josh, he's been there since the 80s, long time. But we're seeing a lot of people are going to retire that are not running. And I wonder, we've had a lot of new people come in 4 years ago. It looks like we're going to have a bunch of new people coming in now. How do you think that's going to affect things when we get people that really don't know the process and don't they think that Alabama politics is an onion that they're trying to peel. Well, once you start peeling, it's not an onion. It's not even close.
No, it's not. I mean, I think to me the scariest part of it is that because of the gerrymandering that we talked about earlier, we've pushed people to the ideological edges. And so when you replace these people that have been around for a long time, what we have typically seen is you replace them with somebody that is to the ideological extreme. And so we've got people on both sides, obviously far fewer liberals than we have conservatives. And they're trying to out-conservative each other for the most part. And, that causes a lot of problems. And we're seeing, we just discussed some of these problems earlier in being able to have a special session on redistricting that's going to be overrun by all these idiots that are doing crazy things. And so that's what we're dealing with now, And I think if that's not evidence of fixing the redistricting process, I don't know what is.
The good news is though, if you got an overwhelming majority of new people coming in, they don't understand the process. And the process, if you haven't been around it, is very arduous. And if you don't understand it and you get confused, what's going to happen is actually going to slow the process down, which could be a good thing.
Well, the thing that bothers me most of all, I think, about this is that we have politicians now who only govern to the base, which is really a small percentage of the party.
Yes.
If you look at the Republican Party, the base, the 10, 20, maybe even 30%, is not representative of the whole, but they govern to that part. Now, I don't see the Democrats, pandering to the liberals here because it isn't that radical here. But again, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. We're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.